Welcome to the Take One Show.
Starting off with college football. I know it hasn't started yet. Technically, this week is week 0. And I believe tomorrow there is 2 games. And Sunday, I believe, is a game as well. And I think that game on Sunday is Utah and Florida. That will, in my opinion, be a pretty good game. Honestly, I think Utah is going to win, but I don't know much about either team yet this season. I haven't really had a chance to watch them yet, obviously, because they haven't played. So I'm going to try and stay away from that talking about games until next week at least. But I am still going to talk about college football a little bit. And I know this is not like me, especially with this, but talking about the national championship, and especially in preseason. But can Georgia repeat this year, or three-peat this year, I should say, which winning 3 national championships in a row? No, because the last time it was done was by Minnesota in the 1930s. And the last team to do it in football in general was the Packers back in the 60s when they had Bart Starr. So no, I don't think Georgia is good enough, especially with all of their players getting in trouble a lot. If they can't fix that, I don't think Georgia has a chance to three-peat with the national championship. And honestly, a few teams that I think could, or really the only teams I think could beat Georgia this year in the national championship are Alabama, which should not surprise anyone. And I know they haven't named a starting quarterback yet, but I think that is more scary than hopeless is probably the best word to put it, or best way to put it. I feel like Nick Saban does not have to name a starter, and since he has not named a starter, I feel like that is more scary because whoever he starts and whoever he plays is going to be good no matter what. And if whoever he names the starter does not perform well, you have another quarterback coming in who can demolish you. So I feel like it's a little scary that Nick Saban hasn't named a starting quarterback yet. And I feel like they'll once again be in the conversation for a national championship, which should be no surprise to anyone. Alabama's going to be that way until Nick Saban decides to retire, which I don't see him retiring. The only way I see Nick Saban retiring, honestly, is if he dies. That's the only way I see him leaving Alabama ever, or unless his wife forces him to retire. But another team that I feel like could beat Georgia is Ohio State, and I know coming from an Ohio State fan, it's a little iffy. I understand it, but I do think they can if Ryan Day can figure out the Devin Brown and Kyle McCord situation at starting quarterback, and if both of them can perform well. I'm not saying play 2 quarterbacks, but if one of them does not play well, then the other one needs to come in and be able to play well and have a connection with Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the key to this offense being good. The defense is going to be good no matter what. That's Ohio State. They're going to have a good defense regardless. But this offense needs to make a stand this year with with Henderson, our running back, going into his junior season, I believe, or maybe senior. I don't know. It's his last year before he's eligible for the draft. I feel like he'll come out and be a stud this year, hopefully, and we'll just see what they can do, and hopefully they can beat Georgia if it comes to that. And the last team I think can beat Georgia is Michigan. The only way I can see that happening is if Blake Corum stays healthy and J.J. McCarthy can also stay healthy. Yeah, Michigan's not going to have Harbaugh for their first 3 games, but the first 2 games are usually D3 schools or whatever they play, but it's usually just easy. Then I don't remember who their week 3 team is, but I know it's nothing amazing because it is the Big Ten. Coming next year, I believe, is all the Pac-12 teams are coming in 2024, and not just USC and UCLA, but it's, I believe, Washington and Oregon are also joining in 2024. But, yeah, Michigan is still that Harbaugh suspension from Michigan, not by the NCAA. He got out of that one. But Michigan ended up suspending him for 3 games for violating recruiting policy or something revolving around recruiting that honestly I don't think he should have been suspended for. That's my personal opinion, even though as an Ohio State fan, I would love to see him suspended for the biggest game of the season near Thanksgiving, the Ohio State-Michigan game. Love to see him suspended for that, but they're never going to do that because that's going to make a lot or lose a lot of views for that game and lose a lot of money for the NCAA. So I understand why they're not suspending him for that or suspending him in general because it's not something that they should be suspending him from. But moving on to the NFL, I'm going to start off with the Packers. Don't worry, I will talk about the Colts a little bit after I talk about the Packers. But starting with the Packers, even though I do think that they will only win 8 or 9 games this season, they're going to be a very entertaining team from what I've seen. Jordan Love looks absolutely amazing. Granted, it is the preseason, so take this all with a grain of salt. But yeah, Jordan Love does look great, and I feel like he will be a solid quarterback. Do I think he will be a Hall of Fame quarterback? Probably not. The odds of the Packers having 3 back-to-back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks in a row is very, very slim. So, no, I don't think he'll be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he will still be a solid quarterback. And if he doesn't look great, we always have Sean Clifford coming off the bench, who also looks really good, surprisingly. I was expecting Sean Clifford to come in and be more of a coach than anything, since he was a 4-year player at Penn State. I don't believe he started all 4 years, though. But Sean Clifford ended up coming in and looking great. I'm very excited to see what he can do if Jordan Love either gets hurt or does not play well. But I feel like if Jordan Love doesn't play well, they're not going to take him out till probably week 10. Once they realize that the siege is practically over. And some more things with the Packers is Jalen Reed is going to end up being a great, great receiver. I think he will end up being Jordan Love's number 2 receiver because as I've been reading, Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs have had a great relationship on and off the field, and Romeo Doubs is starting to become Love's favorite receiver. And honestly, I'm excited for that. Doubs, I think, is better than Christian Watson. And honestly, I think Christian Watson isn't as great as people think he is. I think he's injury prone and not going to be a great receiver. I think he'll end up being in the MVS category. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, for those who don't know who MVS is, now plays for the Chiefs, but played for the Packers for a long time, was their wide receiver 3 for a few years. So I think Doubs will end up being receiver 1, Jalen Reed 2, and Watson 3 if he is healthy. And honestly, I'm excited for this defense coming up for the Packers. Yeah, the defensive line needs a lot of work and a lot of help at stopping the run mainly, but that secondary is looking great. Lucas Van Ness, who is the rookie that the Packers drafted, and I believe the first round, or I don't remember which pick he was, but Van Ness is a linebacker, and I'm looking forward to having him. He's been looking like a stud in preseason, so we'll see what he can do. The offensive line needs to get better. Like usual, I say this every season, they need to get better. Not much else to say other than unpopular opinion from me, and probably a hot take, but I don't think Bakhtiari is ever going to come back from that knee injury that he had, I believe it was 2 seasons ago, where he messed up his knee in some way. I think it was a torn ACL, but I don't think he's coming back. He played maybe 3 quarters last season in the Lions game near the end of the season, but I think he'll just end up retiring. I think he'll probably wait out till the end of his contract and collect all the money he can, then retire, or just retire this at the end of this season. That would not surprise me, and I don't see him coming back at all. It would surprise me more if he does end up coming back. But now on to the Colts. I have been watching a little bit of the Colts, not much, but I did have Ethan write me a few things on the Colts' needs and what they need the most this season. He was saying that they need a running back dependent on Evan Hull and Deshaun Jackson, which, honestly, I don't really think they need a running back right now. They did pick up Kenyon Drake. I believe he was on the Ravens last season. But he is a pretty solid running back, was solid for the Dolphins up until 2019. Then when I watched him with the Raiders, he was still pretty good with the Raiders. Then he bounced around the league a little bit. Was on the Cardinals and Baltimore for a season each, and is now on the Colts. So I think they don't really need a running back right now. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, honestly, I don't know what he'll do. If he can't find a team to trade for him by Tuesday, I think he'll just end up playing because he can't afford to sit out. Taylor can't afford to sit out because he is coming off of a bad season, being injured for part of it and coming back from injury, wasn't playing great. So we'll see what happens there. But honestly, Evan Hull, from what I've been reading and from what little I have seen, he is going to be good, honestly. Yeah, he doesn't show out in the box score, but you don't need him to. As long as he can get a couple yards every run, that's all you need, especially coming in as a probably running back too, because I don't know who wouldn't want Jonathan Taylor, even though the Colts are asking for Sun and the Moon for Jonathan Taylor. But honestly, I think Evan Hull will be a solid backup running back to Kenyon Drake. But more needs for the Colts are offensive line. They have always needed to upgrade their offensive line. I don't think they'll ever have a competent offensive line. That offensive line was the reason for Andrew Luck retiring. If you remember, they practically let the defensive line from every team just beat up on Andrew Luck every game, which caused him to retire early and Colts fans to boo him, which should not have happened. That's very controversial. I don't really care. Honestly, they need a wide receiver, which, yes, Michael Pittman is not a wide receiver one. Yeah, he has a lot of talent and a lot of potential, but I think you need someone else to be able to get in there and be able to build a relationship with Anthony Richardson, which you're going to have to, in my opinion, you're going to have to draft a receiver to develop with Anthony Richardson, which I feel like is the best type of bonding and connection you can get between a receiver and a quarterback, is if you're developing with each other, which is why I think, going back to the Love-Dobbs situation, I think that's why those two dudes are connecting great. And honestly, wrapping up with the Colts a little bit, Anthony Richardson has been showing some flashes of being able to be a franchise quarterback and the next franchise quarterback for the Colts, but you have to give him time. Yeah, he is struggling, but you you want to see a rookie quarterback struggle, but you also, if he's struggling too much, you don't want to pull him immediately. This is how I think the Colts should handle the Richardson situation. If he struggles throughout the year, let him struggle. Let him play every single game. I have said this before, and I will say it again. This is a direct quote from Peyton Manning. I said this a lot last year. If you remember, Peyton Manning set the record for most interceptions by a rookie in his first season. Actually, I think he just set the interception record in general his rookie season. And he said, coming back for his second year, the game slowed down for him. And I think you just need to let a quarterback struggle as much as they can in their first season, then come back and give them that same opportunity to start in their second season. And I think they will perform well and be able to more developed. So just let Richardson struggle no matter what, and let him play as much as he possibly can to develop as much as he needs to. But that's really all I have for the Colts. A little more NFL. Some things I have been reading are the Trey Lance situation over in San Francisco. Sorry. Trey Lance is now QB3 over in San Francisco, getting beat out by Sam Darnold, which is very surprising because they traded draft stock to get Trey Lance, and who is now starting behind Brock Purdy, who's the starting quarterback, which I was surprised to see considering he tore his UCL in his elbow in the playoff game, I believe, against Philly. So I don't really understand how that works or how he's back so quickly, but I guess he is going to be the starter coming up. Trey Lance must not be showing flashes if he's going to beat out by Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has time after time after time after time shown that he is not capable of being a starting quarterback or barely a backup quarterback, in my personal opinion. But I don't know. Trey Lance, I think, should request a trade, even though their GM said that they're not looking to trade him. He needs to request a trade. Let teams know that he is available. If a quarterback gets hurt, they can trade for him. Since he is a third-string quarterback, I doubt they're going to want much for him. If the 49ers want a first-round pick for him, they are absolutely delusional. I don't know why they would want a first-round pick for him, but I do think Trey Lance is good enough to be a starter, but I don't think he's going to be like a generational quarterback or lead a team to a Super Bowl. But he is a competent starter who will be able to lead you to the playoffs and will be able to develop if you give him time. But that's honestly all I have for the NFL. Moving on to IndyCar, which is, if you listened last year, it's very surprising for me. Didn't really watch a lot of it. Ethan pushed me into it a little bit, and I have been into it ever since, and I'm kind of mad at Ethan for that. But, so, just some things that are going on in IndyCar right now. Alex Palou is currently getting sued by McLaren for reneging on a contract that he apparently signed with McLaren, since he is up for a new contract, getting away from Chip Ganassi. But apparently he wanted to go back to Chip Ganassi, but already signed a contract with McLaren. So now both Arrow McLaren and IndyCar and McLaren's F1 team are suing Alex Palou for reneging on that contract. I don't really know how that's going to go. I truly don't know, but Alex Palou needs to kind of figure this out and just honestly, I think Palou just needs to stay out of it and just let the lawyers handle it for him and just focusing on racing for the rest of the season, then figure it out in the off season. But moving on from the Palou situation, there is a race in Illinois this Sunday. And It's I believe the Grand Prix of Illinois, I believe is the name of it. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it is an oval. So who wins? Honestly, I think Joseph Newgarden's going to walk away with the win, sweep the season on ovals, which is very, very impressive. Won every single oval so far this season. And honestly, I think if he does secure the win, I feel like that puts him back into contention for the series award. I don't remember what it's called, as I probably should have stated before we got an IndyCar. I'm not Ethan on this. I'm not a professional knowing all of this stuff with IndyCar, but I am well enough into it where I can tell more of the basic stuffs with it. But I could see Newgarden winning, sweeping the series. But I could also see if Palou does not crash within the first 3 laps, which I doubt he will. He's a phenomenal driver. I could see him securing the season and just winning outright this weekend. But yeah, that's really all I have for you this week. I will see you next week and hopefully be back with Ethan. So tune in next Friday at 3.